Welcome back to the show. Joining me today is John Henry Westen. He is the co-founder and CEO of Lifesitenews.com. He is a Catholic, and he also advocates for the unborn, as does the Dr. Maria show. I'm just excited to have him on, and he doesn't live far from me. He is in Ontario, Canada, and I'm in New Hampshire, but really, in the scheme of things, we're not that far from each other. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Dr. Maria. So good to be with you.
You know, I went to a French school when I was at St. Raphael's School in Manchester, New Hampshire, and they no longer could afford to keep through 8th grade. So they closed my school, and I went to a French school called St. Marie's. It was on the west side of Manchester, which was developed for French Canadians to come down and work in our mills. The oldest bank, credit union in the country is on the west side of Manchester called St. Marie's, I think it's called. So yeah, St. Mary's Bank, to help French people buy homes. But when I went to school with people named John, we called them Jean most of the time, right? Well, you have a large family, don't you, John? 8 children.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. We've been very blessed.
You know, we keep talking about it. You know, the birth rate has been going down. We saw it going down in Europe after World War II. And now the United States, the birth rate is just plummeting. And we were made to procreate, a man and a woman, to have a family, to have babies, to carry on our species, to carry on the race, and to do God's work. So you're certainly helping to contribute.
Yeah, it is in the Bible, you know. Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. But I think a lot of that's got a bad rap nowadays, with a lot of people thinking it is impossible and it's so frowned upon. It's a joy. It's an absolute joy. Yeah, there's hardships, but you know what? There's nothing more worth it.
Absolutely. Now tell me, we have a new Pope now, Pope Leo XIV. I say it collectively, we don't know a heck of a lot about him. Obviously, we know he's an American and he lived in Chicago. But really, a lot of people feared when he was first named that he was going to be a carbon copy of Pope Francis. Many Catholics, not all, but many Catholics felt that Pope Francis' ideology was not backing the Christian faith, even when it came to the unborn. But what's your thoughts on Pope Leo?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because we actually knew quite a bit about, Cardinal Prevost, Robert Francis Prevost. When he went in, we had a tip sometime before that he would likely be one of the main contenders. So we did a deep dive into his background, which very much seemed like he could be a Francis II. And when he came out on the balcony, there's a number of things you noticed right off the bat that sort of told you this is going to be something different. Unlike Francis, he wore the traditional dress of popes when they come out. They call it the mozzetta. It's sort of a more fancy thing. And he prayed in Latin, giving the traditional blessing. And so that didn't quite fit with the image you would have had of him from the past. Now, I think it's very, very interesting that one of the guys I know very well, Father Chris Alar, called out that we're going to see from him sort of both sides, both progressive and conservative. And I think that probably is a good way to describe where we're at today.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think to the blanket statements that Pope Francis used to do, and he condemned, not by name, President Trump, Vice President Vance. He condemned our southern border. And we want to love all people like Jesus taught us, absolutely. But we can't ignore crime and violence and literally the devil's work. I think what happened to the children that were in those caravans and raped brutally by the cartel? How can we stay silent about it? And Pope Francis did. He didn't understand how disturbed we were as Americans on that humanitarian front, never mind the drugs that were killing our young people that were coming across that border. You know, it would be like a fairy tale if everybody in the world wanted to love each other and wanted to accept each other. But we have to accept we have threats. We have terrorist threats from the Middle East, from China, from Russia. These things are real. And if it's not a country, it's the perversion and the attack of our women and children that we're not sticking up for enough, is my feeling.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because I was just in Rome. I was covering the conclave. And literally, as I arrived, I was going by taxi to my hotel, which was close to the Vatican itself. I hit upon the Vatican, and you notice these like 35-foot walls surrounding the whole place. And I thought to myself, sheesh, isn't that funny? Because it was specifically over building the wall that Francis criticized President Trump. So, you know, it was said at the time that perhaps he should look to his own walls, which were there. And certainly, even despite the physical wall, Pope Francis had erected a wall against more conservative Catholics as well. If you think the United States was alienated by Pope Francis's words, where it did seem like that, it did seem like he was picking on conservative Americans. Imagine the conservative Catholics who were alienated, young people who loved that more traditional form of the Mass, the Latin Mass. You know, that was quite something. And so there were all sorts of walls, and we're praying that that kind of you know, silo, if you will, is not perpetuated with this papacy.
Can you help me understand, John? I just don't understand why we're against, and I use we again collectively. It's not my own personal view. I'm honestly trying to seek to understand why Pope Francis and others are against the Latin Mass, the Latin Mass.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I honestly believe that this was an age thing. These folks they're right after the Second Vatican Council. They wanted to do a big thing with it. They were part of the decision to go in another direction from the ancient Mass, which had been around, remember, for like 1,500 years. And so this is an ancient thing from our forefathers. And then especially in that, you know, late 1960s, 1970 period, it was like, we've got a new way, we're going to do this. And it was pretty wild. And they were the progenitors. They were the ones who sort of pushed it and did it. Now, as they see young people rejecting their innovations and going back to that thing, which lasted for like 1,500 years, the Mass of their forefathers, I think a lot of these octogenarians feel kind of like, what? They're going away from what we did? No way. And so it's like clinging to your last grasp at, you know, my legacy. I don't want this to go. And that's really what it is, because young people are flocking to this thing. And you'd think at a time when they can't get young people into the church with their kumbaya and you know, stuff we're going to do, we're going to bring rock bands and clowns. It's just not working. And so I think a lot of it is honestly that.
I remember in the 70s in church when they brought in the folk music, I didn't bother. I mean, I was young, so it didn't bother me or anything. A lot of people laugh about that now. But I too want to go to a Latin Mass. I never have attended a Latin Mass. Now, my husband, who's a tiny bit older, was an altar boy. So he was used to Mass said in Latin. And I think it's good for our soul. Not only is it our history, but that language was the language of, a very high level language. So I think it's good for our brains, actually, never mind our soul, but our brains to hear that language. So I'm excited. I'm on the search now. Excuse me, there are a few churches in New Hampshire who are given the Latin Mass. So I will find one and attend one.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's actually very interesting. So there's many different rites inside the Catholic Church. There's the Sirumalabar rite from my mom's country in India. They have Sirumalabar, Sirumalankara. We have other ancient rites in the church that started in different countries. They're all Catholic, but they came in different ways, and sometimes there was a split off and a return to the church and so on. But all of the ancient liturgies, funny enough, use not their vernacular language. They use that for part of the Mass, but they all incorporate an ancient tongue, usually something like Aramaic, which was the original language of Jesus and the apostles, or Syriac, which is a form of Aramaic anyway, and then Latin, which is also this ancient language. In fact, if you look at all sorts of different religions, they also use an elevated language for their worship services. So it's a very interesting thing. And here we're trying to go away from there. And it just doesn't resonate with the human person. It's a beautiful thing. It's a gorgeous thing. And it's something that I don't think you can alienate from the Catholics in the church, because try as they might to stomp it out. It's been literally 60 years or more of trying to stomp it out, and it ain't working.
No, and you gave me one of the most clearest answers. I've asked other people, why? Help me. I'm seeking to understand why there's this opposition to the Latin Mass. And it really comes down to ego. For a certain generation that wanted to do something new and avant-garde, and they didn't like other people questioning it. It sounds like it was strictly ego.
Well, I'm sure they would say differently, but in the end, you have to have some kind of gumption to basically take 1,500 years of your own history and throw it out the window. It wasn't actually intended from the Vatican Council II documents. If you read them and look at them, this came as an innovation thereafter. And literally, how do you go from the most beautiful mosaics on earth to felt banners? How do you go from Palestrina to like Kumbaya and tambourines? There's no way, unless there is some aberration. And so, if you look at the texts, you'll see, like if you do a side-by-side of the new Mass and the traditional Latin Mass, in the prayers, some of the prayers that they actually tossed out the window, it says from apostolic times, literally from the time of the apostles. And they just decided, we can get rid of that one. So
wow.
Anyway, it's coming back. And we'll see. It might actually come back with a vengeance. The young priests that are being stomped out of doing the Latin Mass, many of whom entered the priesthood hoping that they could do this. Remember, under Benedict, it was opened up wide, and all of a sudden you had a massive influx of young men joining the priesthood, specifically so they could do this Latin Mass finally. And now it's stomped out. My prediction will be in 25, 30 years, when these same young priests who have been denied the Latin Mass now get to their positions of power, they might very well ban the Novus Ordo.
Oh, wow. When Pope Francis first went in the hospital in February, I was in Rome and I was invited to the Vatican, and I've been there many, many times. But this was the first time I was brought to places that most people can't go. The crying room. I saw a lot of different things, and the priests were pretty forward about denouncing Pope Francis's edict on the Latin Mass. So I have a feeling it's going to come back quicker than we thought. There's this energy happening around Catholicism. And it was just a few years ago, the campaign, Come Home. Do you remember that? Come home to the church. The churches were so empty. And I like to stop in other churches. And I went to St. Mary's in Dover, New Hampshire. It's not even my town, but I went there and I could have cried the whole Mass. There was all these young families there, a mother and a father and children. And they had their children there in the Mass. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've seen in a long time. Because I have to admit, my parish, it's all elderly. You rarely see a young person, and most of the church is empty. So I was thrilled to see that in some parts of the world it's going really well, and in my state, I'm very happy about that. I wanted to tell you, John, I saw a little poster as we're talking about our history in Catholicism and the Mass. I saw this poster that said, Israel is one of the only countries who's lived in the same place for 3,000 years, spoke the same language for 3,000 years, and has had their same, they don't call it Mass, but had their same church services the same for 3,000 years. I'm not sure it's true or not, but it sure resonated with me that why aren't we beholding our religion from ancient times? That was the most close to Jesus. So I'm liking a little bit of the revival. Tell me about your whole thing that you're doing that you co-founded. What's that about?
Lifesitenews is a news service that's based around life, faith, family, and freedom. And we've been reporting now online even back when it was uncool to be online only. It's been since 1997. So we have about 30 articles a day, every day, all around our issues. We cover it internationally. We've got reporters in many different countries. We've got a Rome correspondent permanently in Rome. And we've got reporters in most English-speaking countries. We've got someone also in India. We've got a team in Africa, all over Europe. And so it's a beautiful work. It's a work that is dedicated to spreading the truth on all these issues. And obviously, we come at it from a Catholic perspective. So you could say that it's like having the news of the world from a Catholic perspective.
Well, that's wonderful. And people can get you by going to that website, correct?
Absolutely. Lifesitenews.com. We're also on YouTube at LSNTV. We're also on, we have all of our video offerings, daily videos, also at Lifesite News. We're also on all the other platforms. We're on X and Rumble and Facebook and Twitter, Instagram. So we're on everything as well. But look us up there direct at lifesitenews.com is the best spot.
Excellent. I appreciate you being on, John. Best of luck.
Thank you so much, Maria. Good talking to you. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Aloha, everyone. This is Jason Jones for Lifesite News. We hope you enjoyed this video. For more content like this, check the link in the description. You can also connect with us on social media to stay up to date with the latest news on life, faith, family, and freedom. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.